Okay, so he calls this teaching the Four Sons Family Reunion, which is a great title. If you know the Seder, you recognize this text right here from the Haggadah. Begins with the words Baruch HaMakom Baruch Hu, and then it describes the four children who come to the Seder. Keneged Arba'a Banim, Dibra Torah. The Torah speaks of four children who are at our Seder. Echad Chacham, the wise child, Ve'echad Rasha, the rebellious child. I prefer the term rebellious instead of wicked or evil. Ve'echad Tam, the simple child. Ve'echad She'eno Yodea Lishol, the one who does not even know how to ask a question. And now Shaul Wertheimer asks us to think about which son is which. And the proof text is in the Torah that there are actually verses in the Torah about each of these four children. So we're going to go through, we'll just look at the verses and see which one lines up to which child. So the first verse that appears in the Torah about one of the four children is this one from Exodus chapter 12. V'haya ki yomru alechem b'nechem ma ha'avodah hazot lachem. This child asks, ma ha'avodah hazot lachem? What do you mean by this right? For an extra bagel next year, since I can't give you any chametz this year, does anybody know which child at the Seder asks this question?
Is this the wicked son?
Yes, Gabriel Pont, you are correct. Ma ha'avodah hazot lachem is the wicked child. The Haggadah says, he says lachem, to you, not including himself, so that therefore he would not have been redeemed from Egypt, which I've always thought is an overly harsh judgment of the rebellious child. But yes, this is the verse that is for the wicked child. Now let's look at the next one. This is the next one that appears in the Torah. V'higadata levincha bayom hahu lemor ba'avur ze asa Hashem li b'tzeiti mimitzrayim. The parent explains to the child on that day, it is because of what the Lord did for me when I went free from Egypt. Which child is this one?
I'll guess it's a simple son.
That is a good guess. It is not correct, though.
I guess that makes me the simple son.
Yeah.
Wise son?
No,
Is it
not
the
the
one-
wise one.
The one who doesn't know how to ask the question.
Yes, correct. This is the one who doesn't know how to ask, because this child doesn't even say anything. It's simply the father that explains to the child on that day, right? There's no question from that child. It's just the parent explaining. So yes, this is the one, the she'eno yodea lishol, the one who doesn't even ask a question. Okay, this is the next one that appears in the Torah. There are two from Exodus chapter 13. Vayaki yish alcha bincha machar lemor. In a time to come, your child will ask, mazot mazot. V'amarta elav b'chozak yad hotzianu Hashem mimitzrayim. This child just says mazot. What is this? So which child is this one?
The simple son?
Yes, this is the simple son. The simple son simply says mazot. What is this? What are we doing? That's the simple son. And then finally, there's one left from, and this one comes all the way from Deuteronomy. Which one would this one be? By process of elimination, it must be
The wise son.
That's correct. This is the wise one who asks, Ma ha'edot v'achukim v'amishpatim asher tziva Hashem Elokeinu etchem. What are all these laws and rituals and customs, et cetera, et cetera? So it's a fair question to ask. what's with the order? Why doesn't the order that the sons appear in the Torah, why isn't that the order that's given in the Haggadah? We know the order from the Haggadah: wise, rebellious, simple, doesn't know how to ask a question. But the order in the Torah is rebellious is first, right? Then one who doesn't know how to ask, then simple, and then wise. The wise one is at the very end in the Torah, in the order that they appear in the 5 books of Moses. So what's the deal with that? So we have a few different answers. We're going to skip over this text. This is just a nice little comment. Hashem, God, was so intent on maintaining the story of the Exodus in our offspring that he differentiated and recounted the story for each child. Okay, so that's very nice. So Yetziat Mitzrayim, the Exodus, is so important that we should speak to each child at the place where they are. We should make sure we're matching our explanation for our children. I think that's true with everything that we teach our children. Good teachers know how to reach each of their students. But here's this question. Why doesn't the Haggadah list the sons in the order that their respective verses appear in the Torah? Does the question make sense? Okay, I hope so. So this is a comment from Avudraham, who was a medieval commentator. By the way, if you're ever not sure of who someone is, if you say they're a medieval Torah commentator, you're probably right, because that's what most of them were anyway. So, but Avudraham, he really was from sometime in the Middle Ages. So this is his reason. Does someone want to volunteer to read this paragraph in English from the Avudraham?
I'll read it.
Okay, go ahead.
You may wonder why the sons appear in a different order from the biblical verses from which they are derived. The wise one is in Parshat Va'etchanan, while the wicked, simple, and the one who does not know how to ask are in Parshat Bo, with the simple one preceding the one who does not know how to ask. The reason is because the author of the Haggadah wanted to mention them in order of their intelligence. The wise one is first, followed by the wicked one, who is also wise but has been led astray. He is followed by the simple one, who has some wisdom, and lastly, the one who does not know how to ask, who is devoid of wisdom.
Okay, I mean, that's a logical explanation. So maybe that's why the order is different. This is an explanation from the Vilna Gaon, who was really the brightest, one of the brightest scholars of his time. And I really think that he was 9th or 10th century. So would someone like to read this explanation? Go ahead, Shell.
Wise son is a Torah scholar. His opposite son is the one who does not know how to ask. The simple one goes with simplicity, and his opposite is the wicked one. Thus, the order of the sons should have been wise, one who does not know how to ask, simple, wicked. However, the author of the Haggadah put the wicked one after the wise one because he did not want to conclude with the wicked one, in accordance with the Talmudic principle that we conclude on a positive note.
Yes. Okay. Thoughts about this explanation? This is very interesting.
Then why didn't he conclude with the wise one? Because that would have been kind of positive.
Yeah, I know. I agree with you, Mom. His explanation is a little weak at the end.
Well, that's kind of like the order that it appears in the Torah. If you follow that logic, that you should sort of be ending on a positive note, right?
Say that again. Lenny?
So it seemed, if you follow this logic of the Vilna Gaon, that you want to sort of end on a high note, that's the same order that they appear in the Torah, right? That you told us before. They sort of start with the wicked, then go, right? That was like the chronological order where they appear in the Torah.
Yeah.
Started with the wicked and then ended with the wise, like ended on the high note, if you will. So it would be the same as it would mirror the Torah if you followed this guy's logic.
True. But the Vilna Gaon ends with talking about the order in the Haggadah.
Right.
But that's a good point, that you end on a high note in the Torah itself. I like that. But I like the idea that the four children, they have like
The
an
pairs.
opposite, right?
There's like
A
pairs.
pair. That, why do you think the simple one would be paired with the wicked one?
Because like to be like simple implies innocence, and the wicked is, clearly the opposite of that, like the evil intent, if you will.
Yeah. And a simple one can be easily kind of, led astray, can be easily manipulated, I think. And so unfortunately, he's a perfect victim for the wicked child. You could make that case. Whereas the child who doesn't know how to ask needs the wise child to inspire him and to help him learn how to speak up and how to learn and how to ask questions. And this idea that you're supposed to conclude on a positive note, we see that every now and then in when we chant a haftarah, or you see it when we chant Echa, the Book of Lamentations, on Tisha B'Av. And we'll see it actually this Shabbat Hagadol, the Shabbat before Passover, when we chant the Haftarah. Because the Haftarah this Shabbat from the Book of Malachi, actually the Haftarah itself ends on a really negative note. It ends with like that God will, destroy, us if we're not faithful, that kind of thing. And so we end with the verse about Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet, who reunites parents and children. We actually repeat that verse because it was the verse before the last verse. Again, because you're not supposed to conclude on a negative note. You always want to end positive. So this is a thing. This is a real concept in Jewish tradition. Okay. Let's see. All right, we're going to look at one more explanation, and then we'll say the Kaddish for studying. This is an explanation from the Lubavitcher Rebbe. Zichrono livracha, may his memory be for a blessing. Would someone like to read this one? Sylvia, did you want to read it?
Sure.
Go ahead.
The reason why the author of the Haggadah juxtaposes the wise one to the wicked one, and with a connecting vav, is to teach us all is not lost for the wicked one, for the Almighty has arranged it that he is next to a wise one who can help him improve his ways. The wise one should not say, "What do I care about the wicked one? Let him do whatever he wants." For all of Israel are guarantors for each other, and it is incumbent upon every single person to help bring him back to a good place, provided that they remember that it is their job to influence and not to be influenced. You want to move it down?
Yeah.
The wise one must always remember that sin crouches at the entrance, and the greater the person, the greater the Yetzer Hara. The wicked one within him is anxiously waiting to kill him, and he therefore needs to be extra cautious in all he does while requesting compassion and assistance from God. This is the only way that he can overcome the wicked one within him. If this is the approach we must take with the wicked one, with the appropriate caution as mentioned, then it certainly also applies to the simple, stupid one, and the one who does not know how to ask. When the wise one brings together the other children, after all, the author of the Haggadah lists each of the children with a connecting Vav, and Vav is the letter of truth, thereby bringing all of us together as one. God will fulfill our request of, bless us, our Father, for we are all together as one.
So this is a beautiful, I think, and a fascinating explanation. If we just go back, just going to scroll back to the top of the actual text from the Haggadah, right? This, I think, is what the Lubavitcher Rebbe is talking about. Echad Chacham ve'echad Rasha. There's this Vav, ve'echad Tam, ve'echad She'eno Yodei Lishol. The Lubavitcher Rebbe sees in this one letter, the letter Vav, which in Hebrew we would just translate, or to English we would just translate as and. He sees that the 4 children are actually all connected to one another. And he's counting on the Chacham in a way to look out for the Rasha and to help him, get back on the right path, as it were. And he's concerned about the Tam and the She'eno Yodei Lishol, the Rasha's influence on the other children. And he hopes that the Chacham will have a positive influence. And I just love this because the Lubavitcher Rebbe reminds us, first of all, that we're all connected to one another, that we are responsible. We have to try and help the rebellious child and the simple one and the one who doesn't know how to ask. It's incumbent upon us to remember that these are our brothers. I mean, this is our community. And he also seems to imply that there isn't just, you aren't just purely a Chacham or purely a Rasha, that there are elements of each of the 4 children in each and every one of us. That's why he says that sin crouches at the door, which is a quote from the creation story when God is talking to Cain, when Cain is upset. All of us have the potential to become a Rasha if we're not careful about our inner passions and emotions. So I just think that's a beautiful explanation about the 4 children.